So my story happened on my like summer abroad in Vienna in college. And so we were taking like an overnight train ride from Vienna, can't remember where to, in Europe. But as college students, we hadn't paid for like the expensive overnight train. We paid for one where you could move the train seats. If no one sat across from you, you could move it, make it like a bed. I didn't pay for the one across from me because I was really poor. Everyone else did. But I was like, surely no one will buy the one overnight train ticket in our train car. And lo and behold, someone did. So all my friends pulled all theirs down and were like going to sleep. And then this one guy like came to our train and was like, I'm really sorry. And I was like, because I'd already pulled it down and it was getting real comfortable. And everyone else kind of gave me like the salute, like, sorry, you're gonna have to sit and stare at this guy for the whole night. And I was like, great. And he was this guy from Amsterdam named Flo, and he was really chatty. So I was like really wanting to sleep because this was my night's sleep, but Flo really wanted to talk. But I was like, all right, so we're gonna chat. And I was feeling annoyed when he came in, but there was like kind of this weird feeling like I needed to talk to this guy. Cause I remember my friend next to me, he was like, do you want me to stay awake and help you talk with him? And I was like, it's fine. He ends up falling asleep, coming in and out of sleep every now and then because we were just talking the whole time. And Flo was a really, really interesting guy. He owned a pseudo organization or ran a pseudo organization in Amsterdam, specifically working with like homeless kids and teens. And because he was telling me homelessness was a huge problem there, and I didn't realize that. And so he would help them make places they were living into like squatters' rights, and he worked really closely with them. And I remember when we were talking back and forth, he was like, what school do you go to? And I said, Oklahoma Christian. And he was like, oh, Christian. And normally I would have been like, okay, immediately like on the defensive or even the offensive, like a lot of people do. But I didn't have that feeling. I just remember thinking like, okay, like kind of kept talking. And then I remember like a few minutes later, I was like, do you mind if me ask? Like, you made a weird face, or, you know, you said something about, and when I said like where I was going to school, and he was like, yeah. He said growing up, he was forced to go to private Catholic school, and the nuns and the priests, he kind of like outlined a lot of like the abusive practices they did to him specifically and his friends, and it was really traumatizing for him. And he was like, Flo, the guy, was like, for me, I didn't need to be a Christian to do all these good things. He was like, homelessness was really important to him, and poverty was really important to him, and kids were really important to him. And he saw that not being true for his whole life, you know, within the Christian school that he went to, the Catholic school he went to, and how he was like, when people would say things they didn't like, they would beat them. And he was like, that didn't jive with me. He was like, so when I hear that, that's what I think of. And I was like, totally, like, would be hard for me to get past too. And he was like, are those things important to you? And I was like, I know you don't know me, but yeah, like that's all I do, you know, right now. That's what I want to go into. That's what I want to work with. I was like, I've always been attracted to the side of society that people ignore. And I was like, and I think a lot of that is because of Jesus, the Jesus I learned about and studied and fell in love with. And he was like, what do you know, he's never heard people talk about it like that. And I was like, I know that sounded weird probably. And I said, but Jesus in the Gospels spent all his time with poor people. Like, he didn't spend his time with the priests other than like calling them brood of vipers. And Flo thought that was hysterical, and we laughed about that for a little bit. And then in between us like talking about the Gospels, he would tell me about how he fought the mob in Amsterdam, which I don't know the reality of that, but like fighting with his homeless kids over squatters' rights with like the mob. He would tell crazy stories, but I was like, that's really cool. And then I would randomly think of like some gospel story that kind of, I was like, yeah, and he like turned over the tables, and he was like, that's cool. And he was like, but what about women? He was like, that's really important to me. And at the Catholic school I went to, like, they were really mean to the nuns and the girls. He was like, and you're a woman. How do you feel about that? And I was like, strongly, because I'm a woman. I was like, but for me, when I read the Gospels, Jesus taught the women at his feet like he did the disciples, which was so countercultural to the time. Yeah, I wish there was like more things about that, but like that was huge. And when he came back, he appeared to the women. And when he was on the cross, like he was talking to the women. They were the ones who stuck with him. And I was like, so to me, the Jesus I know, that's a big deal. You know, that's a lot. And he was like, I remember we had that conversation right at the end, and like his stop happened. And he like got up and he said to me, he turned to me, he was like, if you ever come to Amsterdam, come find me. And I was like, cool, it's nice to meet you. And he said, if the Jesus I knew was the Jesus you talked about, it would be a lot different for me. He was like, that Jesus is cool. Like, that's the Jesus I wanted to know. And then he got off the train. And then my friends were like, you talked to him the entire night. And I was like, I know, I'm gonna be so tired tomorrow. And I just fell asleep. And that was my story. That's it. That light is bright.